I think we should start, Colin, with the early years in the United Kingdom and take it from there. And you were born in January of 1929, and at age 8 you moved to Birmingham with the family. What was on there, and some issue of depression years and so on?
My father, who was a teacher of engineering, got a job as a principal of a start-up school. It was a strange type of world which I have no experience of. He got this job in competition with 326 other people, all of them well qualified. So there must have been a lot of coin tossing going on in this process. But we moved the 100 miles from Essex up to Birmingham. We lived in the small town, as it was at the time, Solihull, just outside Birmingham. And that's really where I grew up.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the issues, these were the Depression years, these were hard times. And one observation that you had made, that the children of those years were the best fed generation of English children.
Certainly in the war years they were the best fed. I'm not quite clear they were in the Depression years, but in the war years I think there was pretty well no doubt about it. There may not have been much food around, but it was equitably dealt with, and it was healthy.
It was allocated for a nutritional basis.
Yes.
The wartime hostilities clearly influenced your schooling, and at age 14 you had different sort of experience to many other children today.
Oh, yes, going and living in a place essentially away from one's home environment is something that not many people are used to. Going to the same high school as Bill Shakespeare did not have much effect on me whatsoever. Right. But like all young people, you don't make comparisons because this is the world you live in, and you just get on with it. Yes.
I was thinking also of the summer farm activities.
Yes.
Starting at what, about age 14?
At age 14, the whole of the school went and worked on farms, just as labourers.
This was to provide labour because yes, folks were tied up with the war effort.
I mean, it was us, prisoners of war, and other people just working as labour.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now, you had a rather unusual way getting from school through other part there. You finished the formal equivalent of high school at 15.
Yes.
And what would you judge as the most valuable part of that schooling for you?
I better back off. I so enjoyed playing games. I think that was probably it.
You
yes,
that.
quite.
I was thinking a little in the intellectual flavour.
I had nothing that really stuck in my mind at all.
All right.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I think did matter. At that point, you could write.
Oh, yes. Every Monday morning we went in and we were given, I think, 3 typewritten pages and told in the next half hour to reduce this to a half page of handwritten stuff.
And this has been essential for concise writing.
Oh, I think it was a wonderful experience at the time. I cursed it, obviously, but
understand, Colin.
But at the time, subsequently, it's been enduring. Let's put it like that.
Okay. Now, then you went on for 2 years to a technical school.
Yes. Well, it was a technical college, which subsequently became the University of Aston, which I know nothing of at all.
Okay.
But they offered diplomas and certificates in practical things, and the practical material I covered was called building and structural engineering. It was much more involved with how to do it than the reasoning behind it.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Now, you did well there.
I did very well there,
and
yes.
You won a state scholarship that would let you go to any university of your choice.
Yes, yes.
But then we had conscription, and the occupied forces in Europe, or the occupying forces, needed some people, so you ended up spending some time in the army.
I was in the army for whatever the appropriate time was. I think it was a couple of years at that time.
Right.
And, though I got all the injections to go to Malaya, I went to Germany, which was really a painful experience, the injections for no result. I was a corporal in the Royal Engineers.
Right.
And did nothing notable that I can have any feeling about.
The thing that was influential, though, is you saw what happened to a war-ravaged
this
country.
was in the 40s, and it was my first experience of being in a country where war had passed through. I mean, we'd been bombed fairly continually in England, but this was so different.
Right.
I went to Hamburg and was there for some time, and part of the job was just clearing rubble in where we thought streets might be.
Right.
The place was flat. It was an appalling physical disarray.
And displaced families searching for family
well, then I
members.
went to Lubeck, which was and probably still was on the demarcation line between the British and Russian zone, and this was just full of families living in one room, usually with no men, just women and children, desperately looking to make connections with the rest of their family.
Got it.
It was a horrible business.
That lasts with you for a lifetime.
Oh, yes.
No question. Colin, when you were demobilized from the Engineer Corps, or Royal Engineers, you then had the choice of university.
Yes, yes.
And you ended up at King's College, University of London, which is either the oldest or second oldest engineering school in England.
Yep.
Why did you choose that when you had all universities you could choose from?
Well, I like London. On my leaves from the army, I enjoyed spending time in London. It was, to me, a city of opportunity, of excitement. Even though it was drab in that post-World War II period, it was something that was very exciting to me. I had no interest in the older universities. They seemed to me to be stuck in a world that I thought had passed years and years ago.
Okay.
I'm sure they were extremely exciting places. And the third alternative was the newer red brick universities. And
most Americans wouldn't know what the red bricks were.
well, they were universities established at the end of the 19th century, usually in industrial areas, and they were built of brick rather than stone, as
Right.
the Oxford and Cambridge were.
Got it.
So London University had, I think, 5 colleges at that time. Well, it doesn't matter. And I went to King's College. It was a small one, and there was no particular wisdom in that choice at all.
Okay, but the interesting part of there, you have an associate of King's College. Mm-hmm. It had no religious affiliation, but there were offerings of background in humanities and religion.
Yes, I mean, in England it was a 3-year degree, and this was an easy degree in that sense. I mean, you weren't worn down nearly as much as you are in this country by a baccalaureate degree. But there was no liberal arts or anything like that. So you had this opportunity to take an associate at King's College, which were lectures on which you were examined in religious matters, dogma, comparative religion, things like that.
Okay.
And I thought it would be an interesting thing to do, and it proved to be. I found it quite interesting. Yeah.
One of the things that from your time at King's College was a lifetime interest in reading, in art, music, architecture. How did you get to have some time to have those interests at that time of your studies?
Well, the educational system was different. There was a complete separation of lecturing and examination. They weren't really terribly closely connected. Right. We were examined once a year, and so that was the end of a 9-month period. You were intended to study beyond the lectures and to obtain a broader education in that sense. You weren't held responsible for everything, so you were asked to attempt 4 problems out of 7 rather than do all the problems. Right. And this meant that you didn't have to know all the information that was around. I shared a room with a man at London School of Economics, whose father in the Depression had been the president of the Mine Workers Union in England. I saw, and through him, a world that I'd up to then had never known existed.
Right.
So essentially, he invited me, not in a direct way, to see that world and to read about it and do things.
Okay.
It was an exciting period, yes, as it should be, an undergraduate time, yeah.
Right.